Welcome, everyone, to the Dr. Blue Duck podcast. And today we have a pastor, not only a pastor, a gaming pastor, Pastor Daniel Morgan here from Resurrection Church. Hey, Pastor Daniel, what's up, man?
Hey, how you doing? It's good.
So let me get this right, because to me, gaming and being a Christian it's all cool. But for some people out there, they might be surprised to know that there is a lead pastor who is also a gamer, and not just a gamer, one who streams on Twitch and Kick, and that actually has a decent sized audience.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's rare. It's not. It's less rare now. I think gaming generationally is something that. I'm Gen X, and so it's a little more common. But then you get into like maybe the millennial generation, it's a lot more common. I get to Gen Z, they wouldn't even be like, oh, of course. So yeah, it's probably more of a generational thing of gaming as its own little escape. Gaming is like Gen Z's version of golfing. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a hobby.
It's almost kind of weird if you meet someone who isn't a gamer, who's a part of our generation. It's like, you don't game at all? Like, are you okay, bro?
Yeah. Well, I'm a Gen X, and I would say, for the most part, Gen X kind of gets it. Like, we grew up right. I don't know about you. I turned 47 on tomorrow. I turned 47 tomorrow.
Nice.
And so I was in that advent that grew up without computers, and then I got a computer in college. I grew up out without really cell phones. Kind of got one right at that college age. Right, first smartphone, I think, I was graduating college or something. And so Gen X is in that weird spot where our childhood was on like bikes and in the dirt. And then somewhere in that education system, we started getting introduced to it. And by the time we hit the job market, we better have understood it. But we got to hit that first generation of consoles, that first or second generation of like PC gaming, like Oregon Trail, like, you died of dysentery. like the advent of that. And so I grew up without a computer, I didn't get the first thing, I think, console we ever had. I bought a Game Boy. I saved up all my money for like a year. I bought a Game Boy, and I got like Metroid 2, but I was probably 12 or 13 by the time I was playing my first game ever. And so most of my childhood was spent on a bicycle or playing sports. And then by the time I got into college, it's LAN parties, playing Halo and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very generational, right? Get a little bit older than us and no one understands it.
Totally. I remember the Oregon Trail because you could die from dysentery. You get it? Dysentery. I was like, that's kind of cool. Yeah. I also remember playing Number Munchers. I don't know if you ever played that. It was like a math game.
I would play that.
Or Mrs. Mavis Drives or something like that. It was like a typing game you played at school. And the faster you typed,
I do remember that.
The faster you would drive. And if you missed a key, like a bug would splat on your windshield. So what was your first console or first gaming experience?
Yeah, so I think Game Boy is the first that I owned. I would go to my buddy's house. I think he had a Sega. We played some of those early games on Sega, but it was only when I got to go over there. And by college, it was like GoldenEye, the original Resident Evil. Nowadays, Tomb Raider, the stuff that's like so pixelated now, we would laugh. We'd go, this is trash. This is worse than Minecraft. But back then, we thought this is the pinnacle of all experiences.
I remember walking into a Toys R Us and seeing a Mario 64 display. And I literally said to myself, it cannot get better than this.
Right. I can distinctly remember, I went to college in LA. I'm down in LA. It's late at night. And there's like 4 or 5 of us just laying in the living room of this like apartment or dorm or something, playing Resident Evil. And like one person, it's a single player game. One person is playing and the rest of us are just watching. It's like a story, we're just always watching and like walking down this hallway, and then these like rabid giant wolves pop out and everyone's like, it's like a horror suspense film. Like, it's like grown guy, 19, 20-year-old guys are all like losing their minds. And yeah, it's I don't know. It's there's a nostalgia to playing games. If you're our age, there's things that I remember that I want to share with my kids now. Just the experience of getting to discover things in a story mode that was compelling. Of course, then, I misremember things all the time. I think like that probably wasn't rated that badly. And then I go back and look and I'm like, whoa, there's a lot more language than I thought there was.
Yeah.
maybe we'll wait a little bit on that. But yeah, and now I'm at that age where my kids are all old enough to enjoy various things, and some really enjoy games, some don't. But the ones that do, we'll sit and we'll play stuff. And we had like a family Valheim server for a little while. My boy, my youngest, he's really into games, and so we'll play stuff. I schedule a date night with each kid. So every month, each on a different week on Thursdays, each kid has like a date night. They can pick whatever they want to do, and he's just waiting. He's got it on the calendar. He's like, "This is what we're doing. This is the game we're playing," and this, he's got it all laid out. So
Now, how many kids you have?
I have 4.
Definitely, you're not just a gaming pastor, you're a gaming dad as well, which is perfect for this channel. My son right now is in the other room. I'm kind of keeping an eye on him. He's only 5 years old, but he's playing Goat Simulator 1 and Goat Simulator 3. And if you know anything about Goat Simulator, it's a ridiculous game where you're just walking around doing random stuff as a goat. And it's so ridiculous. They came out with Goat Simulator 3, even though there's not a 2, because it's not supposed to make sense, because you're just this goat walking around the simulated environments doing just random jobs. And it's just kind of a fun, just nothing game. You're really just walking around, just having fun. And it's kind of perfect for him. There's no like agenda or good or bad or evil. You're just walking around as a goat, and he loves it.
Yeah, I have 4 kids. Oldest is 20, youngest is 12. And so I have 2 in kind of various stages of college career, and one that came back home for a while after being over on the East Coast and doing some internship work, and she's going to school and working, and then headed down to Northridge probably next year. And then I've got another that lives in LA, and then I have 2 more at home that are a freshman in high school, and then a 6th grader. And so yeah, it's fun. That's a lot of fun.
Now, man, I only have 2 boys, and my time is so limited.
Yeah.
And you're streaming, you're, the head lead pastor of a church. How in the world?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot. So I would say a bunch of stuff about that. Like, one, I think, different people have different capacities. And so I think knowing your capacity is really important. And knowing your capacity in the season you're in is also important. And so I think there's seasons where I've had more capacity to do more things. And there's seasons where I'm like, no, I've got to really narrow this down. And, well, you got kids under 5?
Yeah. Well, 5 and under. Yeah.
So like when you have kids under 5, your season is different. That's just the reality, right? In fact, I would say this: until you're not taking diaper bags with you, your season is different. When you get, if you're co-parenting, you have a spouse. When you get the 3rd kid, everything changes, because you can play man-to-man defense with 2, but you got to switch to zone once you get past 2, right? And so there's seasons of that, and I was really a lot more into gaming during COVID because I couldn't do a lot of my other hobbies. You weren't allowed to go anywhere, and so I was connecting with people on like a Discord and meeting new people and having an opportunity to talk to people that didn't know the Lord. I found myself somehow in 2020 on a Discord with like 1,100 people. And I think there was me and maybe like one other person that were believers. Through just hanging out and playing some games with those folks, I ended up becoming one of the server managers. And I was like, man, how did this happen? But I had a lot of influence. And so once it kind of got out there that I was a pastor, I would be getting messages almost weekly from someone on that Discord going, hey, I heard you're a pastor and I have this question. And I found that to be really a fun thing. And I met so many people across the country and in other countries that, about 2 years ago, I went back to Virginia. So I live in California, and I went back to Virginia to buy a car for my sister and drive it home. And I thought, I've got a little bit of time. I wonder if I could go from Virginia to California, how many people I could meet that I've met on Discord over these last 4 or 5 years. And so I messaged a bunch of people, and I never stayed in a hotel. Wow. I drove from Virginia to North Carolina to Kentucky to Indiana to Chicago to Nebraska to Texas to Arizona, back to Bakersfield over 8 days. And I met with like 12 different people from Discord and just slept on their couches and met them in person and hung out with them and just had an opportunity to connect. And it was a lot of fun.
I feel like certain gaming environments, there's a real brotherly culture about it. I know I like to play the Quest 3 headset sometimes, and I like to play a game called Population 1. And I know that's a really tight community because it's a smaller community. And this group of people, they meet in Las Vegas and they rent out like a bunch of hotel rooms and they all stay there. and they play VR together in Vegas with this big
Right.
mass group of people, which is kind of funny because like you could just do that, in your home and it's the same thing, but they all go out and have dinner and stuff as well. So it's kind of cool. I can see the community there being kind of strong. Now, tell me a little bit about streaming because a lot of dads have tried streaming and they've gotten like 0 followers
Yeah,
or
yeah.
0 viewers. And I mean, you're not like a full-time streamer or anything, but you have some, you have a little bit of an audience. How did that happen? Like,
Yeah, I don't stream much anymore. I used to try to get to it, once or twice a week, and then again, seasons. I'm not in a season where I have the margin right now, and so I haven't streamed much in the past few months. And then I really realized I need a little bit more of a hobby, and I've been working probably a little too much. And so I decided, hey, I think I'm trying to pick this up once a week on my day off and do a couple hours. So for me, that it's streaming and playing games is just kind of the hobby to take my mind off other things and enjoy. Again, I don't have little kids to take care of, so I'm streaming and my kids are at school, or I'm streaming and my kids are relatively self-sufficient. There's been seasons where I was like, man, my primary ministry is my wife. It's always going to be, so it's my relationship with the Lord comes first. My job and duty to my wife comes second. My responsibilities as a dad come third. And then all other things flow from there. For me as a lead pastor, that's fourth. Gaming, streaming, all those things are always going to come after those things. And, when I'm talking to like guys about their responsibilities, it's always like, where are you irreplaceable, right? Look, the world doesn't need another streamer. If I stream, great. If I don't, whatever. No one can replace me as a husband. No one can replace me as a dad. Those are irreplaceable roles for me, and God called me to them. And so just my life in general with the schedule I have requires a substantial amount of discipline. And I felt a conviction maybe years ago that like I was going to have to be more disciplined. And so there have been seasons where, like before I was PC gaming, when I had an Xbox, there would be seasons where, man, I was like, I might be playing a little more than I want to. And so I would unplug, I take the power cord off the back of the Xbox. It was back when it kind of had a unique power cord, right? No little AT cable would work. You had to have the special Xbox cord. I would take the power cable and I would take it to work on Monday and I'd leave it on the shelf at work. And then Friday I would take it home. And it was for me, it was my own insurance of going, hey, I want to be insured. I want to ensure that during the week when I was really stewarding my family, that I'm all in with my family. And then I'm not even tempted to go turn that Xbox on. There have been times where I've uninstalled games. I felt like I was playing them too much. I'm like, I'm just going to install that for a few months. I'm going to give myself 90 days, or I've done a lot of little things like that. In our faith, drinking is not really good or bad or anything. It's whatever. In our faith, it would be don't be drunk. And so I've been a recreational or occasional drinker probably for 15 or 20 years as an adult, and my wife. And I realized about a year ago, like, what I think, even when I drink, I might be doing it too frequently. I might be waking up the next day a little less productive than I was, and I should have thought about that, and I didn't. And after a few, I would take breaks, and I'd try 6 months off, and then I don't know, maybe the third time, this is about a year ago, I just realized, like, if the definition of alcoholism is the inability to perfectly control what you're consuming, then I'm an alcoholic. And so I just quit drinking for life. I was like, nope, that's not worth it. I think if you want to get anything great done in life, you're going to have discipline to do it, right? And if the average discipline gives you average results, then to do something great, I think you're going to need great discipline. And so my life is structured. I get up at 4 a.m. every day. I go to the gym at 4:30 a.m. every day. I get home at 5:35. I take a walk with my wife because that's when we have time together. I start making my wife some breakfast and coffee and getting the kids ready, right? And so I've regimented that life. And even things like streaming, I bake in that margin, and I'm very intentional. It doesn't just fill in all the gaps. If it filled in all the gaps, I'd be neglecting my wife. I'd be neglecting my kids and job and everything else.
I like how you mentioned having like a schedule. And for me, it's a list on my phone of all the things that I feel I need to get done that day. And I kind of have it planned. And sometimes I even put on there, like, go on a scooter ride with my 5-year-old son.
Right.
Because I might get home and forget, or read this book to my 2-year-old. And because I get home and I forget, but then I'm like, oh shoot, I wanted to read that book to my 2-year-old. I'm going to do it. I'm going to check it off my list to be able to do that. And I think discipline is crucial. You're so right there, Daniel, that we do need to have an organized life and not just go with the flow. And it's like the classic phrase that if you fail to plan, you kind of plan to fail in a lot of ways. And if we just kind of go throughout our day with no plan or nothing, not thinking about what we're going to do, we typically just end up wasting the whole day. And of course, we do need those days of rest.
Yeah.
And we need to take our Sabbath, whatever that looks like. But for the most part, man, I think that's kind of how we have to get stuff done, is to be organized like that. So now you're streaming. How do you feel about Borderlands 4? I just purchased that yesterday. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I also just got, I mean, I think I technically pre-ordered it, but I've not done much with it. I've got maybe an hour or two into it, and I have been a big Borderlands guy. I mean, I've played every Borderlands game. Some of the earlier ones I played through in every character. I just enjoy the kind of open world, fun looter shooter. It's not real serious. It doesn't take itself very seriously. And you know, while I do enjoy the multiplayer aspect, the best games for me in a lot of seasons are single player games, because if they're pausable. So if you have a kid, if you have kids, you have responsibilities, and you can just immediately pause and walk back to the primary responsibilities in your life, that's very advantageous. You know, a game I played for 5 years or so that is just tough to play as a dad is Escape from Tarkov. It's like super intense and super focused and very real time. And man, the slightest distraction, it gets you killed. And I've just realized there's just a lot of seasons where I'm like, that's not a game I can play right now. Having a family, having people around.
Well, you even add being a pastor to that too. I mean, I'm sure you get text messages and phone calls sometimes where you're like, man, this is important. This is critical. I have to answer this call right now. I have to respond to this text right now. If someone's dying in a hospital or they're going through some type of major crisis in their life, I'm sure there's a lot of responsibility there. Where I'm a high school teacher, so I can come home and be done.
That's nice. But I would say that regardless of what your job is, including pastor, you have to have boundaries in your life. And it's not just boundaries for gaming, although that's probably more tempting and more important, but it's boundaries for work. You know, I think we deal with a lot of we deal with a lot of the distortions, the two extremes, right? We deal with the workaholic, and we deal with the dad that won't work, won't support his family, won't work hard. And they're both distortions of what God intended, and they're both dangerous for the family. And so we have both in the church right now, right? I got 5-6 cases of dads that just won't work, and they're lazy. And we got guys walking with them and talking to them. And then I got guys that are workaholics, and they're working 65 hours a week, and they're never off, and they respond to every text. They never turn that phone off. And so they're never really engaged, never really present when they're at home. And so that's a distortion. And so even as a pastor, I have teams, I have elders, I have deacons, I have a care team. I am not the first line, the first phone call. I have on and off times. There are times where I'm turning that off. It's not an emergency. I'm not the guy that gets called when the alarm goes off. I'm not the guy that gets called if there's a fire. Call 911. If I'm on all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I'll burn out, and this ministry job will last 2 years, and then you'll find another pastor. So setting boundaries, I think, is super critical.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of wisdom with that too, is having those boundaries and times off. And I feel like I've known people in ministry who did not have those boundaries, and that's exactly what happened. It's either they get burnt out and they quit, or they get burnt out and they make poor decisions and they're forced to kind of leave their ministry. And you know, both of those are pretty bad. There's sometimes, maybe not, you know, not with us so much, but there might be some stereotypes about pastors who game, or some type of critique with it. It's like, how can you be a pastor of the church and play games with violence and where you're shooting people, and how can you do that and then go up and, you know, teach a gospel message? Like, of course, that's definitely not my opinion, but you know, I've heard people kind of critique people, or even people ask me like, "Oh, you play video games? And you're in ministry? You know, what games do you play? Because I want to critique you." So, like, how you ever have those issues, or have people kind of critique you on that?
I guess yes, but there's two parts to that question. So the first is absolutely, you're going to have people that will judge you for anything. And you don't have to be a pastor or in the ministry to have outside people who have decided they have an opinion, right? If there's one thing the world has no shortage of, it's opinions. As a man, as someone that's going to be called for most of us to lead a family, to steward their wife, to steward their family, to be the spiritual leader in the household, you better have serious conviction to understand whose opinions I listen to and have value, and whose have so little merit that I would not even lose sleep, or I wouldn't be a stutter if I was walking by. I'd be like, okay. And that better be clear. And if it's not clear, this is what the Bible talks about when it says, like, if you don't have strong doctrine, which is really, what are your beliefs? What are your convictions? That you get tossed to and fro like the waves with every little wind of doctrine. And the same thing goes when you can't tell whose opinion matters and whose doesn't. You're gonna be a mess as a you can't lead anybody. And so there have absolutely been people that have taken shots at me for, trust me, gaming is probably the least of my criticisms, but gaming too, certainly. And for me, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, and like so I would say, like, for someone that would want to really press in and say like behaviorally or doctrinally that like maybe there's some sort of biblical thing, I was like, oh, I mean, we're playing a fictional game. Have you ever played a board game? Have you ever played a card game? Have you ever read, I don't know, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe about fanciful warfare of animals, right? I mean, like, it's just, again, everyone has opinions. Rarely are they good. You got to know who's you're going to listen to. And look, I have an inside circle. And everybody better have this. You have an inside circle of people that can hold me accountable, and I have granted them the right, or even requested, depending on how that accountability works, for them to poke into my life anytime they want and ask a question. For me, it's being gentle. That's a particular marker for me. I say I like to be aggressively gentle. Not meaning I don't want to be aggressive at all, but I want to be proactive in hunting you down and being very kind. But I want to be relentless in the way I love people. And so there are a group of people that will just literally, it could be a text message or a single sentence. They'll call me, hey, are you being gentle? And it's kind of the code word of going, hey, this is a struggle that I have. Therefore, I have people that are watching, and those people, I care about their opinion.
Man, that's good. That's good, Daniel. I like that. And I know I have like it's probably like 3 to 5 guys that are part of my inner circle. And those are the guys I can really call up when, things are hard in life. And I know I kind of hit a point of exhaustion probably about last Wednesday. And one of my buddies, who's also a pastor here in town, I called him up and just kind of, I text him, and then I get a call like within like 20 minutes. He's like, "What's up, man? How you doing?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm just exhausted." And it was just like, man, he's like, you need to take some breaks in life. You need to do this and that. And he was telling me the things that I really needed to hear. And he knew me well enough to know what my struggles were, what my struggles weren't. And he knew that sometimes I could spend too much time doing stuff and I needed to kind of just relax a little bit. So yesterday I spent the whole day just doing nothing. I played some Borderlands 4 and laid in the middle of my living room as my sons jumped on my back, just kind of chilled and relaxed. And
sounds like a good day.
Yeah. I think I took a shower at like 7:00 at night, and we went and got the habits. And some milkshakes. It was great. It was a nice day. And what I found was, not only did I need that, my wife needed that, and my 2 boys needed that time too. And it's like when you add like Awanas and, serving on Sunday morning and this and that. So we have encouragement groups at our church. My wife's going to be leaving pretty soon for a childhood training to work in the nursery. Just an update on all the procedures and all that. And it's a lot, and we're busy. And as believers, sometimes we can definitely get too busy. And that's one thing on this channel I like to talk about. Sometimes gaming is a great break. Gaming is not a way to abandon, or it's not a form of escapism of our callings in life for the believer, but I think it's a time of rest. It's a time of renewal. It's a time of re-energizing. So when we have that rest and we have that break, we can come back and even be that much more like effective, like ministers of reconciliation. We can be that much more effective fathers and husbands and employees and all the ministers and all the things that we actually do out there in life. Now, there might be someone listening to this podcast who's like, hey, that's cool. Pastor Daniel is a pastor and he teaches the word and he's a gamer and he seems like a cool dude. And what if they're interested in ministry as well? What if there's someone out there listening who's interested in someday being a pastor? Like, what would your advice for them be?
Yeah, so some of that is probably dependent on kind of where they're at in life. If you're 17 and you're thinking, man, I think I'm being called into ministry, or vocational ministry. I think that your approach probably is different than if you're 37 and you have a family. That's a to be determined. I think everyone is called to ministry. I don't think there's anyone that's not called to ministry. I think every single person that God redeems, he also calls. We are called to be ministers of the gospel, ambassadors of Christ. And you might be an ambassador as a high school teacher. You might be an ambassador and you change tires down at the local tire shop, but you're an ambassador for Christ. And he's given you a calling both to live out this faith at that job by working in an excellent manner as if God was your boss. And then secondly, you're going to have these talents, these gifts that the Holy Spirit gave you at the moment of salvation that you get to use that may be for the body, because all spiritual gifts are for the edification of the body. That may be through the context of a local church. Maybe that's an outreach program. Maybe it's something completely different. It's our job to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit and begin to do that. I think the local church is the hope of the world. And God didn't architect this concept of the local church and call it the body and give people spiritual gifts and do all of these things in the New Testament as like, well, here's one option. It is the option. There are no Christians in the New Testament apart from the local church. There are no Rambo Christians that just run around and go, well, I'm not really part of any church. Well, then, man, we got some significant problems. Everything around calling, everything around gifting, everything around service, everything around reflecting community in the New Testament is around a local church. And so if you think you're being called maybe to vocational ministry, or, and this is probably what most people feel, you're just beginning to get more hungry to serve the Lord.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I've heard people say, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I hear people say a lot like, oh yeah, I believe in God, but like, I don't go to church or anything like that.
Right.
Or, yeah, I believe in God, but I don't like church. And it's like, really? And it's like, how can you, I don't know. It's just, it seems to be a disconnect there, because if
huge disconnect.
Yeah.
Here's why I would say that all of the fruit of the Spirit, so Galatians 5:22 and 23, all of the fruit of the Spirit are things you really can only do and see when reflected in a community. Like, are you growing in patience? The only way anyone's going to know is if you're around the community of Christ and they see the patience growing. Are you growing in joy? It has to be reflected to see it and experience it. And so to me, someone that says, I'm a Christian, but I don't go to church, I'm like, oh, what a coward. You could say whatever you want when you're on your own. Living it with messy people is the brave, hard part, right? Like us wading our way back into a group of messy, sinful people, which we all are, and trying to live out the gospel where people will hurt us inevitably because they're sinful and messy. That's the calling of Christ. Claiming Christ and then hiding somewhere. What does that do? That's crazy to me. That's silly talk. And by the way, you almost only see that in Western civilization, right? You see that in the US and a little bit of like Western, maybe not so much in postmodern world, but that evangelical, these 1970s Americanized church, you might see it a little bit there, but you don't see it in the Bible.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always kind of shocking when I hear people say that, and it's like, oh, you're not connected to the body of Christ at all, but you're claiming to be a part of the body of Christ. It's like, what, And there's obviously sometimes there's issues in life where people might have medical issues where they're bound to a bed or something like that. But even with that, you can invite people of the church to come to you, or maybe have people do a life group Bible study in your home, all types of stuff.
We got some Zoom Bible studies. I mean, we got people that are housebound, that are on the online church trying to help, and they're going, hey, can I do admin work from home? I mean, you want to work, you want to serve, you want to impact people. There's a way. I don't think that's what you and I are mostly experiencing when we hear somebody say, I'm not part of a local church.
Exactly.
You said something earlier, and I wanted to touch on it. You said that your life can fill up with Awana and other, for a believer, that's what you said, for a believer, these things. And I would say, let me go take that a step further and say, everyone's life fills up, no matter who you are. Nobody ever, in fact, like, it's so funny to watch when your kids get older and they're like in college, they're like, I'm so busy, I have no time. And you're looking at them, not married, not in a relationship, don't have kids, don't have a job. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
And here's what I mean by that. Your life never unintentionally fills up with margin, ever. Everyone thinks they're busy. Everyone thinks they're too busy. You have to be vicious with your schedule, vicious with your boundaries, vicious with your time. My wife and I take these walks in the morning, and we put our phones away and we walk. with no distractions so that our attention is just with one another. And we have to be super intentional about that time because it will fill up with distractions and beeps and notifications and phone calls and messages. And yeah, yours will too. There's a big push maybe a few years ago when Disney was going like really, really far left as fast as possible. And there was a big push in the evangelical world to go anti-Disney. And I remember I had read it and I ended up saying it in a sermon somewhere. I was like, guys, you're so angry about Disney trying to get your kids, but the truth is that travel ball got them years ago. Travel volleyball, club volleyball, whatever, right? You are either vicious with that schedule for your family, with the priorities of your family, with family nights, with discipleship of your kids. You're either vicious with that schedule or it fills up and you're a victim of your schedule. Like, what happened? So yeah, there's no just hope it works out.
And just being a high school teacher and seeing my students in high school, it's just like, man, it's like, yeah, we're sometimes worried about what Disney's doing to kids, but man, that social media, that cell phone, all of that's just constant all day long. And I can't imagine, like you were talking about when you were younger in high school, you didn't have that. I didn't have that when I was in high school. And I was just thinking, how tempting would that be to me when I was in high school, that all like 2,000 kids that I went to high school with are all connected on this device, posting pictures of everything that's happening in my entire social arena. And I'm familiar with most of them. And this device that I have in my hand is also one of the number one gaming consoles for this newer generation. So it's like, it would be like me having like multiple telephones out with pictures and all my friends right there on the phone at all times, and my Nintendo or Super Nintendo or Nintendo 64 all set up right there, all on my desk at the same time while I'm trying to learn stuff in school.
And it's so tough, Terry, hard. Like to raise kids in this, like I would tell you that I think we're raising kids. It is harder right now to raise a emotionally, spiritually healthy kid in this time than ever before, because a lot of the things that came by necessity, hard work and perseverance and resilience for thousands of years, those happened incidentally. Well, we have to survive. We've got to go, harvest the wheat out of the field. We got to go milk the cows, right? And that got taught by necessity. We live in such a world of comfort and technology that we have to be super intentional to teach it. And our kids are victims of a lot of this stuff. Man, there's a study just came out late 2024 said dads are spending more time with their kids than ever before in recorded history, and getting the worst results. And I think it really points to the advent of technology has our kids, like we are just ruthless with our kids' electronics. I mean, we're like, here are the on hours, here are the off hours. We have that set and programmed into their phones. We have the Google Family link. We monitor everything. Can't install an app without us. Can't uninstall an app without us. Got hours of when it turns on and off. Got DNS filters on the home internet. I mean, we are ruthless with it because man, it's so dangerous, so powerful, and anything powerful can be dangerous.
Yeah, man. Well, Pastor Daniel, this is great stuff. I think it's going to be really encouraging. Let's kind of end it, since you're a pastor. We don't always end our video podcast episodes like this, but since we have a pastor and there might be people curious, people who are not Christians listening to this, what is this message that you preach on every Sunday? What is this salvation message? What is it?
Yeah, it's if you're ever wondering, you need to open a Bible. You just go to 1 Corinthians 15. And in the first 8 or so verses of that chapter is the most succinct, most summarized version of what we would call the gospel message anywhere in the Bible. But the Bible, all 66 books that span a couple thousand years, really tell one big story with a bunch of little subplots. And that big story is that the original creation of everything was perfect. This place called the Garden of Eden, and there was no death, there was no pain, and we had this pure, unfiltered relationship with God where he would come and he would walk with us in the garden and talk. And that relationship was so deep, so joyful that you and I, Terry, being in this world, can't even really comprehend the whole thing. But for love to be really love, there had to be choice, or else we were robots. And so the one choice, the one thing to not do was there was this one tree. Don't eat of that tree. Just don't do that one thing. And what we call the fall, or the midway point of the whole story of the Bible, happened in Genesis 3, which seems like the beginning, but it wasn't. And it was the point where Adam and Eve decided it would be better to be God than to obey God. And at that moment, everything fractured, and God gave them their wish. we call it the curse, but God said, if you want to know what life is like without me, what this earth would be like without my presence, then I'll remove my presence. And then for thousands of years, we tried to live without God. And it has been a disaster, right? We're in a series in my church right now called "Why Are Things So Bad?" It's like, why are things so bad? And we have generation after generation tried to figure life out. We've tried education, we've tried technology, we've tried riches, we've tried conquest, we've tried sex, we've tried, everything. And nothing has seemed to fill the gap. And God knew all along this was going to happen. And so there's this beautiful story where he takes his one and only son, Jesus. And Jesus is born of a woman, lives a perfect life, never disobeys God, and then still is killed and murdered. And he dies. He voluntarily gives up his life to pay for our debt to God for disobedience. And 3 days later rises in victory. That is the gospel story. And Jesus says, no man can come to the Father except by me. But he offers freely salvation that you and I, through belief and confession in him, in his power, and in his kingship, can experience relationship with God again. So that's the gospel message. And man, we preach it every single Sunday. It's Romans 10:9-10. If you would believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved.
That's awesome. And your sermons, in case someone wants to hear more, are they posted online anywhere?
Yeah, so we have a YouTube channel for our church. That's probably, if I were going to direct you anywhere, it wouldn't be my social media or my really infrequent gaming schedule. It would be Resurrection Church in Bakersfield,
I'll
our
go
YouTube
ahead
channel.
and link that below. So if you guys want to hear some sermons from Pastor Daniel, we can go ahead and check out that link. So awesome. Pastor Daniel, any other closing words here?
I would just tell anyone that maybe is if you're a believer, but you feel like, man, I wish I was a stronger believer. I wish I had a stronger faith. You're in good company because kind of everybody feels that way. And what I mean by that is, even in Jesus' time, there's a beautiful story where a guy asks Jesus to heal his daughter, and Jesus says, anything's possible if you believe. And he cries out, I believe, help me in my unbelief. And so it's okay to intellectually go, man, I really want to love God, but I don't feel like I do. You're in a great place. You know that he's God. You know that you should, and now you just have to do the hard work of putting yourself around people. That's the local church, to learn how to want him more. A.W. Tozer says, we want to want him. I want to want him. Help me want you more. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So go do that. You'll working on putting effort into knowing God better. And for those maybe that are watching that are skeptical or would label themselves an atheist or an unbeliever or just, I'm not sure, I would just tell you this, man, you're watching this video for a reason. Maybe you thought that was an accident. Maybe somebody sent it to you, but God is sovereign. The God that designed everything you see in creation, took stars and spoke them into existence. He's pretty powerful, and there aren't a lot of accidents for him.
When I was in high school, our pastor felt pretty strongly about this. He put a banner going all the way behind the stage, and this thing was probably about like 15 feet long, probably about 5 feet high. And it said, don't go it alone. And it was just something that was like pushed into my brain. Don't go it alone. We weren't designed to go out there and be alone out in this world. And a lot of these dads are alone. And maybe that's why they do a lot of gaming, because they don't have a community. They don't have a church. They don't have a life group. They don't have that Christian community to encourage them or build them up. One of my good buddies, he always says, hey, don't be a solo cholo. And that always kind of stays in my mind. Hey, and if we have guys not coming to church in a while, it's like, hey bro, are you being a solo cholo? And it's like, yeah, I am. It's like, okay, well, we miss you, man. Come hang out with us.
The famous pastor had this quote years ago, and I can't even remember who it's attributed to, but it was so beautiful because, oftentimes I think if you're not in church or you're disconnected and you kind of look at the church and go like, everyone keeps saying that's community, but I feel like all those people feel like they're better than me, right? And I would tell you, that's not the way most of us feel. And the best quote I've ever heard that kind of encapsulates that is, hey, I'm just one beggar telling other beggars where to get bread. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'm just a beggar trying to tell you, hey, I know where there's some bread. Let's go get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for people who have like a bad idea of church in their minds, I think a lot of that is a lie. It's a lie. And of course, you can find bad churches, You can
Sure.
find bad schools, you can find bad universities, bad jobs. So there's bad things out there. But I think for the majority of like Christian churches, Bible believing churches that you walk into, you're going to find a lot of people who are struggling and hurting and coming together and seeking the Savior together, seeking Christ together. So, man, awesome. So I'm going to put that link below so people can check that out if they
Yeah.
want to get involved. And we definitely encourage them to get involved in a local church that is in their area.
Can I pray us closed? All right. Father God, we thank you that you work through all things. You work through your holy scriptures, that some of those were written thousands of years ago. You work through the prayer of the saints. You work through churches, big and small, in rural communities and in downtown metropolitan areas. You work over the internet. You work on online things and social media posts. You work through neighbors and what seem like random chance encounters. And you even work through video interviews, God. And so we ask that through the power of your Spirit, you would impact those who might watch this to grow in their faith, to grow in their desire to know you, and to put real effort behind seeking you and wanting to hear from you, God. That you would continue to stoke a fire inside them that begin to burn and bubble up and impact other people. That they would experience here on earth the joy of knowing you and the confidence of knowing that we're not even living our best life yet. It's still to come. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And for all the viewers out there, as always, be kind, use your mind, and aim on.